Let's talk about the education side of things with my first guest in this hour, Stephen James. He's a teacher. He's also co-founder of the Invicta National Academy, which was set up at the start of the COVID pandemic as a result of COVID and lockdown policies, meaning that children were missing out on learning. Good morning to you, Stephen.
Hello, good morning, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Well, let's talk specifically about the teacher strikes. We found out, obviously, that National Education Union ballot that had reached the threshold to see teachers going out on strike. Their first strike day will be the 1st of February, that day when we're seeing railway workers and civil servants going out as well. The news today is that the head teachers are going to refuse to put contingency measures in place to limit the impact of those strikes in terms of having bigger classes, drafting in supply teachers, maybe getting in volunteers to help out. What do you make of that?
Look, I think it's hugely misguided by the head teachers if that's the kind of direction they want to take. I mean, certainly the head teachers that I know and the people that I'm talking to are ones who are going to be, putting plans in place. They're the ones who are going to be getting volunteers in, getting people in from around the community to inspire children. And I just think, the more we can do to keep children in school, the better, because as you well know, when children are absent from school, it disproportionately affects disadvantaged children, children with complex needs, and the best place for them is in school. We must make sure. I mean, they've lost so much education over the last...
And it was the poorest children who already at the worst schools, most disadvantaged kids, who lost out the most. Because my daughter's school did 6 hours of Zoom lessons every single day, loads of amounts of interaction, loads of homework, and it's made me absolutely furious that every school didn't provide that. And it was the National Education Union and others who were demanding that teachers shouldn't be in the classroom and that schools were closed to the vast majority of children. It was the Education Union that demanded that schools didn't go back in, demanded that children wore masks, and, as one of my guests pointed out earlier, who were demanding at one point that it was just the teachers shouldn't, in the first lockdown in 2020, they shouldn't provide online lessons because it was an invasion of their privacy, and they at home, sitting at home, and they hadn't been trained. I mean, I've said before, I've said many times, I'm sure many teachers do care about education and learning and pupils, and about half of the National Education Union members didn't bother to vote or voted against going on strike. But I don't think the leadership of the National Education Union give two hoots about kids.
Absolutely not. And this is the thing. So when Anna Firth and I both set up Invicta Academy, we did it with exactly the kind of what you just explained. Is there were private schools who were delivering lessons 9 to 5 all day. Children were having homework, and I looked at the state sector. I'm thinking, why aren't they doing exactly the same? So we had a meeting. We set this thing up, and we reached so many children throughout the pandemic. Now I stepped away from Invicta Academy when the children went back to school, because it's so important for me for children to be actually in front of a teacher, in life, in person.
And we know even when they were having lessons, they weren't learning as much as when they were actually in the classroom in real life.
Yeah, and there are various surveys have come out and shown that 4 in 10 children actually got access to high quality education throughout COVID, which is awful. And there are so many children still missing, and we're still paying the price from education.
There are 100,000 plus who've just kind of never reappeared, but either sitting at home, getting involved in crime, drugs, generally their lives are probably wasted forever. I mean, this is the thing, and we've just dumbed down our standards, haven't we? Well, look, with head teachers saying they're not going to put contingency measures in place, we've seen various head teachers' unions have actually balloted for action and they've reached the thresholds in Wales, but not in, say, in England. We've seen strikes, of course, in Scotland, rolling strikes going on. But in total, there are going to be 7 days of walkouts across February and March from the National Education Union. Should head teachers just make sure they do everything they can to make sure that children can come to school and get, even if it's not a physics class being taught by a physics teacher with a qualification, but at least they've got some work to do that is related to that, and they're actually in school and safe.
Yeah, 100%. There are so many options. They can get football coaches in, sports coaches. They could have a sports day. They can get business leaders in to come in and talk about their careers, inspire children to go into different careers and those sorts of things. Now, the NEU itself, I think is a really awful organisation, because what they are doing is they were constantly harassing teachers with text messages, letters, go on strike, go on strike, go on strike. And it's this relentless cajoling of teachers which I think has led to this. You've seen with the other unions, they haven't reached the threshold, because generally speaking, I think teachers are very kind of fairly moderate And it's the unions, you're right, which are absolutely giving teachers a bad name. And it makes me so cross when you hear about, the things coming out of these teaching unions, and it's being accredited to all teachers. Because, I sit there and I'm thinking, well, actually, Bolshevik Bulstead doesn't speak for me. Comrade Courtney doesn't speak for me either.
These are the co-chairs, Kevin Courtney and Mary Bousted of the NU. But again, it is still the biggest union. But a lot of people think, people must share those views. But if you're a teacher, you want to have some protection of a union. It's the biggest union for teachers who aren't heads. It's the one you'll join, isn't it? What do you think about parents? I thought this, if we had another lockdown, that basically every parent should just take their kid to school anyway, and if the gates are locked, there'll be someone there anyway. Put your kid over the gate, walk away and say, here's your packed lunch for the day, turn your phone off and say, my child is going to go to school no matter what on those days. Should parents do that?
I think possibly that might be a little bit tricky. I mean, some of the gates and some of the walls around these schools are quite high.
I never know whether that's to keep us out or them in, but there we are.
Well, a bit of both. But what you will find is that there will be a community of parents and teachers and teaching assistants and community leaders who will do exactly that. They will put things on for those children because it's not always about reading, writing and arithmetic. They are hugely important. It's about those additional experiences that you can get in school as well to develop you. And why not have an enrichment day doing something with something, a little bit different? Head teachers can do that. They're our most experienced teachers. They're the people who are the most passionate about education, you'd like to think. So there's no reason why they can't do that. And if you look at the, the unions as well, why aren't they, helping make the profession itself more efficient, help make it more, save money here, there and everywhere. And you know what? If we save money, the biggest expense for a school is actually wages. If we save money over here, we can spend it on more wages.
Stephen James, teacher himself, co-founder of Invicta National Academy. Thank you very much. I love talking to people, Emma Revel from the Centre for Policy Studies, who are that passionate. I sometimes feel that often we don't see that passion in some of the teachers we have in schools, state or private.
That's true, and I think when we see, union heads, their job is to represent their members. They're not necessarily they're not about representing the children, especially when we're looking at teacher strikes. But there are, thankfully, tens of thousands of people, teachers like Stephen, who are passionate about kids and about education, and will be doing whatever they can on these strike days to make sure that kids have some provision.
And there are loads of different things we can do. I mean, the amount of times when you think, oh God, what sort of, there's some weird day at school and it's nothing to do with them having maths and English lessons, but